the world can be divided into two parts. And when I say the world, perhaps I should say our environment. And these two parts are the enigmatic part and the non-enigmatic part. And we could also refer to these as unique and irregular. The unique being that which stands alone, and the regular being that which is regular. And the reason I'm saying this is because I'm trying to follow on from what I said yesterday. And what I was saying yesterday is that this aspect of reality, which is the core aspect of reality, which is the enigma, cannot be dealt with by the thinking mind. It is a glitch for the thinking mind, and so the thinking mind is the wrong man for the job when it comes to dealing with it. And then I was saying that when we do come across the enigma, whether it's the core enigma, which is the enigma of existence itself, or whether it's an analogue of that, which is a way that the core enigma shows itself in terms of things that we can't fix or things that we can't get to fit into our our way of looking at the world. And our way of looking at the world is an orderly way of looking at the world. It's not based on an enigma. It can't be based on an enigma, because you can't base anything on an enigma. It's not a basis. It's not a basis for anything. It's not solid. It's not reliable or predictable or computable. So we operate by projecting our own form of order on the world, which is the mind's form of order. And then we relate to these projections as if they are the world. And these projections make up the non-enigmatic aspect of reality. And we can deal with those and interact with them and relate to them using the thinking mind. The thinking mind is quite happy to relate to them because they obey the thinking mind's own rules. So it's very happy. Now there's even a glitch in this, even though there doesn't appear to be a glitch. There is, but we'll come to that a bit later. So when we strip away the projected order, or when the actual nature of reality comes out despite us and assails us and manifests itself in our orderly world, then we can't use the thinking mind in order to deal with it or to relate to it. Not without creating an awful lot of trouble for ourselves. So if it's trouble we want, that's fair enough. But if we're fed up with trouble, and we all are fed up with trouble, it's fair enough to say that we're fed up with trouble, that type of trouble. Especially if we get a big dose of it, which is what happens in neurosis. We're very fed up. Fed up is not the right word, of course. So in that case, bringing to bear the rational mind on our neurosis adds a whole new level to the neurosis. It exacerbates the neurosis. And so I was saying that what we do instead is that we bring consciousness to bear on it, so to speak. Whatever the hell that means. And it is kind of hard to understand or explain. But one good way of explaining is to differentiate between the thinking mind and consciousness. So we can have one on the one side and the other on the other side, and we can work out how they're different, in what key ways they're different. And the key, absolutely the key way in which they're different is that rationality is a positive phenomenon, whereas consciousness is negative. So consciousness is negative because it doesn't project reality, and the thinking mind, as I've just said, operates exactly by projecting outwards its own assumptions, its own framework. So this is why we can call it positive. It's an assertion. We are actively asserting what things are, which in philosophical language is positive. Now that's only right and proper for thinking because that's how thinking works. It asserts a framework and then operates within this framework. And for the most part, this works well because the framework that we project echoes the situation in the material world. If it didn't, we'd be in trouble. Our thinking wouldn't match reality and we'd come a cropper. But our thinking is adapted to everyday physical material reality. It's pretty well adapted to that. It's not adapted to other things. So if you're a quantum physicist, you know very well that the thinking mind isn't adapted to the subatomic realm. We have to get rid of the thinking mind. You have to ditch it because it's no good there. And if you're a mystic, you could say, well, the thinking mind isn't adapted to the whole of everything either. So we have to ditch it again. Because the thinking mind only gets to operate by dividing things up and comparing them and making ratios. And everything is always in comparison to something else, to some standard or framework. And we can't do that with the whole of everything because the whole of everything is the whole of everything. And there's nothing outside it to compare it to. So bang, thinking mind's no good anymore. Absolutely no good. And that's only right and proper, that's fine. So the thinking mind is good in that middle realm between the very, very small and the grand scope of everything, when you see it all in the one go. And we can get by in our lives quite well without ever considering the subatomic realm or the grand scope of everything seen in the one go. We seem to get on very fine indeed. It doesn't bother us at all. We pay no heed to the fact that we're living in some kind of provisional middle zone that doesn't really reflect reality, or it doesn't really reflect the whole of reality, but just a little bit of reality. But there's times when we run into difficulties, and neurosis is the classic example of when we need more than the thinking mind. We need those aspects of ourselves that we've forgot, that aspect of ourselves that we've forgotten about. Which we could call consciousness. Consciousness, like even though I said it was maybe difficult to explain, in one way, is very easy to explain in that it's a negative phenomenon, which means it doesn't project its own assumptions. It withholds from projecting its own assumptions. Actually, consciousness doesn't have any assumptions, it doesn't need them. And it receives, it is sensitive to what is out there. So when I'm in a moment of consciousness, I'm not saying what things are, I'm seeing what they are. It's not me that's the author, I'm not calling the shots. I'm refraining from jumping to conclusions. Therefore, there are no conclusions. So consciousness is I suppose we could say it's a state of sensitivity, a state of receptivity. And we could also say it's like space. For that very reason, in that space doesn't impose its own ideas or prejudices upon the objects that occupy it. We'd be in a fine pickle if space did that. The mind does that, and that's why if we live entirely within the realm of the mind, we do get into a pickle. But space is spacious and it's non-prejudiced. So space is kind of saying, yeah, that's fine, to whatever is in it, because it's all the same to space. And you can put any object at all in space, and space doesn't have any problem with any of them at all. Whatever it is, it's allowed. So mathematically, we can equate space to the universal set of everything, or U as it is known, big U. And big U's are different from all other classes. Well, it isn't a class, but it's different from all other sets because there is no criterion. If I say that a set is a set of all triangles with all three sides, where all three sides are the same, or where two sides are the same, or whatever the hell, that's my criterion, and it excludes, because anything not fitting with the criterion doesn't get to be in the set. U doesn't have any criteria. Its sole criterion is whatever exists is in it. Everything is in it. And that is not a criterion because it doesn't exclude anything. So we can relate this non-exclusivity to consciousness. And so consciousness has nothing to do with control or evaluation or trying to get things to be a way that they're not, or has nothing to do with stress and strain and angst. Because, like space, it is infinitely peaceful with whatever goes on, which is a function of it having no criteria. So if we are operating from the basis of consciousness rather than thought, whatever we come across, we're at peace with it. And not only we're at peace with it, we're also interested in it in a peaceful way. We're interested in it for its own sake, not because we see the possibility of exploiting it or imposing our own form of order on it. So this is kind of fascinating to think that, or to realize that in our day-to-day lives, we spend an awful lot of time, I don't know how much percentage of our time we spend, imposing our own form of order on the world, or trying to, or controlling, or trying to exploit. We're in exploit mode or manipulation mode. And from the narrow perspective of exploitation mode, there seems to be an advantage there that fascinates us. The advantage being that we can successfully exploit and get whatever it is we want out of the situation. From a broader viewpoint, we can see to go around like this the whole time is utterly ridiculous and painful. Where's the need for it? Seeing as how we are living in a vast expansive universe where everything is fine being the way that it is. Why this relentless controlling? And the fact that we're controlling comes out of a trick anyway, because we've made it so some special state of affairs is important to us, so we have to control for that state of affairs to come about. And this is our game. That's the definition of any game. And yet, because that special state of affairs is only important because we have artificially arranged for it to be, that makes a nonsense of the whole thing. Why would we go around playing this game the whole time when playing the game means missing out on the peacefulness and expansiveness of reality when we're not playing a game? We're missing out on an awful lot. And we could also say that what we're missing out on is the non-enigmatic nature of the universe. Because all we ever see are our own purposes, our own order, projected order, reflected back at us. That's not enigmatic. It's just our own preoccupations. It's just us reflected back at ourselves. And actually, if we were to stop and contemplate it, we'd realize that the only interesting thing there is the enigma. Anything we know about, anything that's cut and dried, is incredibly tedious. It's tedious not only because it's regular and just like every other thing we've been dealing with, it's also tedious because it doesn't even exist anyway. Only the enigma exists. So this kind of tips us off as to why we would be doing this perverse thing of playing games the whole time, or controlling the whole time, or trying to exploit the universe the whole time. We're doing it out of fear of the enigma. Because the enigma is the big terrifying thing. And we contrive to live in a non-enigmatic universe. A neat and orderly universe where everything can be explained. Everything has been resolved into categories that the thinking mind is happy about. And that's what we've done, and that's what we're doing, and that's what this world is all about. But the only thing about that is, as I said earlier, there's a glitch in that. So you might say that the enigma is a glitch because we can't solve it. Even though it's not really a glitch because there's no need to solve it. It's just us saying that there is. And the reason we're trying to solve it is actually we're trying to exploit it in some way, because understanding things is exploiting them. But actually, the glitch lies in this world of the non-enigmatic. Simply because the non-enigmatic world is the world of my own order projected outwards. So it's the thinking mind's assumptions overlaid on reality itself. So here's me relating to my own categories, my own projected order, my own construct. And in the process, I've completely left reality out of the question, out of the picture. So I've got this claustrophobic relationship going on with my own constructs, my own constructed world that I have created, or the mind has created. The mind is relating to that world quite happily. Only it's not so happily for us, really, because that tautological relationship, because it isn't a relationship, I can't actually relate to a thing that I've created myself, because I can only relate to something that is not myself, that is other than myself. So that's not a relationship, it's just me stuck in a very small private world. And that is glitched because whenever you take away reality, you end up with this situation where there is only the paradoxicality of thought. And the paradoxicality of thought comes about from the basic nature of thought, which is polarity. And in polarity, we chase the positive and try and get rid of the negative. Even though by chasing the positive, we potentiate the negative, which means that the more we succeed, the more we set ourselves up to fail, and the whole thing cancels out, and we never get anywhere because we're just spinning around and around, oscillating between plus and minus the whole time, whilst hoping that we can break through into some kind of situation which isn't self-contradictory or which doesn't involve neurotic struggling, which we never can on the basis of the mind. So, to put that in a simpler way, when we're trapped in our own heads, trapped in the thought-created world, and also trapped in the thought-created world as the thought-created version of ourselves, that's neurosis, that's neurotic suffering right there. And even though we might think we're getting on fine, that's just because the neurosis hasn't come out yet. It's biding its time. We think we're getting somewhere because we haven't actually encountered the horrific glitch of living purely within the hyper-real or purely within the mind-created reality. But there's a glitch there all the same. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. So that when failure within the terms of the mind-created reality hits us, and this is failure that the more we try to fix it, the worse the problem gets. We're stuck because this isn't the type of thing where if we try to fix it harder, we can succeed. It's a type of thing that if we try to fix it harder, the problem gets worse, which is the essence of neurosis. And we can never learn this on the basis of the thinking mind. So the only thing that can help us in this situation is to become more than we are, bigger than we are, bigger than the thought-created version of ourselves. We have to grow as people, as individuals, to become in such a way that we can bring consciousness to bear on our situation, rather than the restless cogwheels of the rational mind desperately trying to compute a way out. So it's taken me a little bit of a while to get onto what it actually means to bring consciousness to bear on our neurosis. But hopefully I can do that in the next installment. So thanks for watching.